What I'd like to do now is introduce Stephen Nelson, class of 1996. Stephen is going to introduce Emilio. They were close back in the day here in Athens on Court Street. And Stephen, please, by all means, introduce our distinguished alumni for the 2020 year, Emilio Collins.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'll say hi to Mike Wolford. I know his brother Matt very well. Actually, Matt kind of gave me the nod to get into the program, where Doc Higgins put me through the worst interview that I've still had professionally in my life, because it was brutal. All the horror stories of how you were interviewed to get into the program, they're all real. Lower table, cold room, make you feel uncomfortable. I appreciated Doc Higgins for everything he put me through back then, because it taught me a lot now. As for Emilio, it's an honor. I think that everybody holds this award up very high, and I know that I specifically hold Emilio up very high. I participated, obviously he was at my wedding, I was at his wedding, but his friendship and his bond that he had amongst our friends, a core group of us, not only in the program but then beyond, is fantastic. He's always been one to rely on. And he's always been one to rely on for good stuff and crazy stuff, which includes when he dressed up like a female road worker, including helmet, the flashlight, the vest, and everything for the Ohio University Halloween party, which then he continued to not only play the role at Halloween parties, but then play the role in the streets of Athens as he directed traffic. As people thought that he was a real road worker, he directed traffic then all over. And one of my best memories, for those of you that are a wrestler or know a wrestler, is when I went with Emilio to Ohio State to see Ohio State Michigan play, where then he introduced me to his wrestling family, both on Ohio State and the Michigan State side where he had undergrad. Probably one of the most experiential nights and evenings of my life that I'll never forget, and I can't share actually publicly because I don't know if he'd get the award here shortly. So Emilio's had a fantastic career, always wanted to reach out to everybody. I think it's actually fantastic that our program's now reaching out and acknowledging him as well. And I personally thank him for all he's done for me as a friend and as a colleague in the industry. That I'm not in the sports industry, but he's kept me close to it. But our friendships carried us way beyond what this award will ever mean for him or for the program. And so with no further ado, I congratulate Emilio for the award that's very well deserved, and I will pass the baton to him.
Thank you, Stephen. That's pretty remarkable, buddy. It's great to see you. Love you. I miss you. Appreciate the great words. And hello, everyone. Appreciate you all joining us tonight. Students, fellow alumni, members of the faculty and administration. Certainly hope everyone is home safe and healthy. And thank you for this just tremendous honor. It means the world to me. Special thanks to Jim and Matt for all your continued leadership of the program. It has grown in countless ways under your guidance over the years. And to Jim Strode, our department chair, as well as Associate Dean Heather Lawrence Benedict. It's kind of hard to believe where we are right now as a world, that I'm here accepting an honor such as this one virtually, a logistical dynamic that none of us could have ever imagined just a few months ago. Now it's become a part of our absolute everyday norm. And I think it's no secret that there's been a number of real silver linings throughout this. We've all experienced living through this in different ways, but the additional time we have with loved ones, the slowing down of life and our pace just a little bit, the opportunity to be a bit more present has been the good parts of this. And I'd like to think and hope that at least some of this carries over into whatever our new normal looks like on the other side of it. There's one sentiment that's been consistent for me throughout all this, and I figured it'd be appropriate to talk about tonight. And that's just this overwhelming feeling of gratitude right now. Gratitude for what I'm fortunate and blessed enough to have around me. My incredibly loving wife, Kate, who enables me to do all that I do, often at great sacrifice to her phenomenal talents and passions. My daughters, Naya and Zadie, who I'm watching grow into amazing young women before my eyes. Gratitude for my extended family, including my mother-in-law, Linda, who's been staying with us here tonight, and is here in this room as well throughout our entire quarantine. As well as all my close friends throughout my life. I've been virtually connected and reconnected with so many in the past couple of months. And for the career I've been blessed with, from my old SFX agency days to the multiple roles I was able to take on at the NBA, and now having the most fun in my career at Excel these past few years, throughout working with and learning from some of the most remarkable individuals in the business. But tonight, a particular gratitude for this incredible OU sports ad family that I've been able to be a part of. I want to start with Tracy Ellis Ward, a class of '92, and a recipient of this award 3 years ago, who actually gave me my first internship in sports when I was still a student athlete at Michigan State. Doc Higgins for somehow letting me into the program 25 years ago. The stories that Stephen told are absolutely true. It was brutal, but I'm a better person for it. And of course, just for being the original architect to whom we are all indebted in the program. To Dr. K for actually letting me stay in the program, despite nearly destroying Bird Arena with our Friday night Mud Slam class project, and your phenomenal leadership as well, just throughout my time in Athens. And then just gratitude to so many classmates and a network of fellow alums. Brent, Jesse, great to see you guys. It's such a phenomenal network that I know we all embrace and love so much. And in particular, one individual that Brent called out, and Mike Redlick, who was a dear friend. Unfortunately, we lost tragically way too soon last year. Rest in peace, Mike. You were the best. And then more broadly, just gratitude for all that we are able to be fortunate for in terms of this career that we have in sports. It's pretty incredible we're all able to call this our careers. And this is a field that has always been such a passion play, whether pursuing it because you were once an athlete as I was, or have always just been a diehard sports fan, or just have the incredible competitive drive that our industry fuels. We all do this for the reasons that are well beyond it being merely a job. For me, it was always really personal. And fair to say that sports really saved me. I grew up in a single parent household with just my mom and my sister. And at age 6, my mom committed herself to getting me to try to play soccer. And despite me having absolutely zero interest in it whatsoever, and I have a vivid memory of her driving me to soccer practice and literally having to pull me out of the car to get me out on the field. And yet somehow after that first day, I was into it. And many years of soccer followed, led to football and ultimately wrestling, where I really found my passion, which was odd because when I started, I was absolutely terrible. But somehow after a freshman year campaign of precisely 3 wins out of 26 matches, those few tastes of victory got me hooked in a sport that became my calling, and I started to grow with it. And then, a couple of years later, my junior year in high school, I got hit with a little bit of a shock in that my mother, my rock, who was there for everything throughout my childhood, she passed away suddenly. And I was pretty lost. And if it wasn't for this sport that I found, I really have no idea how my life would have ended up. I was not an amazing student. I was not otherwise especially driven. I had no other solid family foundation around me. But sports was my outlet, my release, and it was ultimately my savior. I threw myself completely into it as a way of working through my grief. I set my goals in honor of my mother, and I was fortunate enough to finish high school as a state champ with a full scholarship to Michigan State. I know my story is not unique, and I raise it because sports has that power and will always have the ability to impact and transform lives in ways big and small. And I think in times like this, I think it's really important that we all remind ourselves of how and why our industry can be so magical. I loved how Jesse was talking about it earlier, just the importance. I wrote it down when she said sports is part of the cure. And I believe absolutely it is. And I know, look, this is a really unsettling time for any of us that have ever lived through. And I think this year's graduating class in particular, it's by far the most daunting moment to be heading out into the workforce. So I thought I'd take a minute to address that in particular, because I know you guys are looking at a tough road ahead, or what feels like a tough road ahead, given that our industry is all but shut down right now. So I'm going to quote the late author Harry Golden, who once said, "The only thing that overcomes hard luck is hard work." And we're in a lot of hard luck right now, and it's going to require a lot of hard work to get out of it. But as long as you commit yourselves, you're all going to be fine. I have no doubt. For all the reasons Jesse and Brent talked about earlier, sports is going to be such an incredible opportunity for all of us. And I think it's going to take a different form that I think we're all going to really make sure we are benefiting from. As a society, look, we're always going to forever need and value sports. Outside of religion, there's really nothing in the world that galvanizes people the way sports does. It unites us, it gives us an escape. It absolutely gives us hope and inspiration, and it's going to be back stronger than ever. And obviously, we're already starting to see signs of that this month with tomorrow's return of the UFC. I'll give a little plug for the match that we're producing in a few weeks with Tiger, Phil, Peyton, and Brady. NASCAR and PGA Tour are returning to their schedules. There's going to be learnings, I think, with all these experiments. I'm sure there's going to be fits and starts. It's not all going to be done right out of the gate, but ultimately, I think we all know we're going to thrive again. But more importantly, I think for those entering the workforce today, it will be back in, I think, a new and more innovative and creative way. And it's going to require a lot of new thinking for which we should all be positioning ourselves accordingly. The value of sports content will continue to drive programming. Jesse talked about it earlier, a documentary about a guy who hasn't competed in 20 years is doing 6 million views a night right now. It's pretty hard to believe, but just shows the passion everyone has for it and how much they're starving for it. Sports gambling is going to continue its proliferation across the U.S. landscape as more and more states will have even greater shortfalls in their budgets to make up for what they're dealing with right now. And digital activations have become that much more valuable for brands given attendance restrictions around live events. Ticketing is going to be revamped, venue experiences and hospitality will be reinvented. Storytelling around sports will continue to grow, and brands will need more help than ever before in navigating this new landscape. So all this creates, obviously, phenomenal opportunity for our industry and for everyone in this year's graduating class, as well as all the other alums out there who may be trying to figure out their next moves in this climate. So in order to take advantage of it all, I think it's more important than ever to be principled, to just have some rules of the road to guide you in both finding your way and making your mark. I have 5 that I'd like to share, and I've cultivated them throughout my life and my career, and they continue to help me in each new challenge that I take on. And my girls are here with me in the house now, and I can see them giggling already because this won't be the first time they've heard them. But frankly, I believe these are just as relevant to them as they should be for you. First of all, just do the right thing. Lead with integrity, acknowledge your faults, own your mistakes, have the best of intentions, and treat people right. And don't play games. These are simple, so simple, but there are times when you're going to be challenged to compromise what's right. And I urge you to have the strength to resist at all costs. Secondly, have thick skin, be tough. We're all getting stepped on right now, and it's going to happen to you throughout your career, hopefully in much different ways than this. But you're going to have a hard time. You're not going to find the job you want right away. Mine was setting up tents at a hot air balloon festival, followed by a stint at a gym. But I eventually found my way just through staying after it. And you're going to get there too. And on your way, I think you're going to be forced to often deal with people you don't want to work with difficult personalities you're going to have to navigate. And you're going to need a certain degree of toughness, of perseverance to really carry yourself through. Just don't shy away from it. Embrace them, learn from them. They're going to always make you better. And please always remember that our human spirit makes us all so much more capable than we can ever imagine. Third, work hard and work smart. Our industry is one of the most demanding segments of business and in the most high demand as well. And you must outwork everyone to get ahead. You must think differently and think creatively. Always do more than is asked of you and make sure that you are consistently finding ways to add value, whether in entry-level role or senior management. Delivering value begets success. So I'm a Michigan State guy, and so I threw in a little quote from legendary football coach Big E Munn here. The difference between good and great is just a little extra effort. I urge you all to be really great right now and live up to this tremendous expectations of this program. Fourth, be accountable. Take ownership and responsibility. Acknowledge the realities of your environment. Commit to finding solutions. Create a culture of accountability around you, and remember, it always starts with you. Accountability only works when it's consistent. It's not a one-time thing, it's an all-time thing. And it can easily be one of the biggest differences between success and failure. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, and I think personal to me, embrace the art of persuasion. I firmly believe there is no more important skill in our industry than the ability to persuade and convince someone toward your point of view. This applies so much more broadly than just sales roles. Being able to communicate effectively, to pitch, to present, to debate, to negotiate, to understand the nuance of how to position, to sell yourself. I first learned this right here at OU. We did a crazy event back in '96 called Friday Night Mud Slam. And the class was originally scheduled to do a WWE event until I asked them one night if I could pitch a new idea and explain to them the importance of us as a class being able to really fully manage a project from start to finish with all the intricacies around it. And the benefits of that over merely supporting an established sports property, making a pit stop through Athens. They somehow bought the crazy idea. And since then, I've always appreciated those similar moments in my career when I've been able to just influence a new direction. I think it's so critical in absolutely everything that you do, and really think that's something that everyone should embrace at the outset of their career. So 5 principles, 5 guides, whatever you call them, use them. Or if you don't, then find 5 things of your own. But what's most important is make sure you always know what it is you stand for. So when I speak of gratitude, these are some of the things that I'm most thankful for during these unprecedented times. The memories, the lessons, the relationships, and to all of you, just a big thanks for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it.
Emilio, thanks very much for those warm words. We have great gratitude for you. It's hard to believe a year ago you were here as one of our keynote speakers. It's crazy as we sit here on campus now, just literally right behind us in one of the Scripps buildings. Gratitude for being a great host of one of our capstone projects this year. I know that it was a significant issue you put in front of them, but you and your team really managed them incredibly well. So we're incredibly grateful for that opportunity. I thought what I'd do to get us going here is maybe start with a few questions, and then much as we have with our other speakers, I'm sure we'll get some from those out there in Bobcat land. But first and foremost, I know you mentioned that your first job was working for the Hot Air Balloon Festival, and you had some other event experience. But as a fan of sports and live sports, I'm wondering what's it going to take for you to be comfortable to kind of go back to a game, maybe take your daughters with you, or how do you kind of start to get your arms around what might need to happen in the public spaces where this competition happens for you to be comfortable?
Yeah, look, we're going to learn a lot over just the next month. I mentioned UFC's return tomorrow, and obviously we are closely paying attention to the sports that most impact our business, which are golf, baseball, basketball, and soccer and football. And we're thrilled to see golf has a return set for next month. We're heavily involved in that exhibition I mentioned as well. And we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out and navigate the return on basketball and baseball. So look, I think it's going to be a crawl. I think it's going to be slow going. I think there's clearly going to be a lot of attendance restrictions at the outset. And I don't look at myself personally really as anyone different than the rest of the regular public who's going to be going through the same analysis of safety. I think one slight difference for me and my family, we actually all came down with COVID-19 about 6 weeks ago. So we're not confident that we are fully immune, but we're at least feeling like we hopefully are. So we may be a little bit riskier than others out there, but it's going to be a slow walking back into the reality that we're used to. And I think for at least the next year, people are going to have a lot of caution about getting out there.
Curious as to if you have any idea, and thank you for your work on the event, next week's golf event, obviously charitable cause, incredible celebrity power that you'll have there, and I can't wait as a golf fan. But any insights as to who you think the league that gets back first might be, and really kind of looking obviously NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball. We know football is out in front with their schedule, and we had the draft. But as you look at those 3 leagues, any inclination of which one might get back to competition first?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be baseball. Looking at what's happening in Korea right now, looking at being an outdoor sport, the fact that there's less intimate contact certainly than basketball and hockey. Of course, hockey you have the benefit of protection and equipment. But we're staying pretty close to the baseball discussions, and feel relatively confident we'll be looking at something in July for a return. It's hard. I mean, everything that's being navigated right now, I mean, I'm probably closest to the basketball discussions in the NBA. And, you know, they were obviously leading the charge in all this in terms of, you know, that Wednesday, May 11th, where they canceled the season, and the entire sports world and seemingly the entire universe woke up to the severity of this situation right now and shut everything down. I think the NBA is being a bit cautious. They're going to look at the lessons that come from these restarts over the course of the next month or so. I think it's also hasn't been talked about that much, the fact that, you know, many more NBA players tested positive for COVID-19 after the cancellation of the season than during play, right? And so just living their lives, right? And so that's a lot of the analysis I think the league is going through. Like, at some point, does it become just as safe or just as dangerous, depending on your view, to play basketball than just to live your life? And so I think it's going to be a question of really staying close to the climate out there and feeling like it's the right tone and right environment. But just by the nature of the structure of basketball as a game, I think it's certainly a little bit harder for them than it would be for baseball.
I'm going to change gears here a little bit and ask you about Excel. Just a fascinating company, collection of highly successful individuals that came together to form Excel Sports Management. Can you talk about what that process was like, and how everyone kind of had the same vision to deliver a different type of agency experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It started with Jeff Schwartz. He founded the firm nearly 20 years ago. He was originally a tennis agent and then moved into basketball. And some of his first clients were Jason Kidd and Paul Pierce. And he built the top NBA player practice. And we represent today about 70 NBA players across the league. You're going to see an announcement coming out next week on our draft class, which is probably our best ever. So we're thrilled with where basketball is. And then, as basketball became pretty mature and there wasn't really a lot more room for growth, he just saw an opportunity to really go multi-sport and reunite with a couple of his old buddies from IMG days. So brought in Casey Close to build a baseball business. That started with Derek Jeter. We now represent about 170 major and minor leaguers. So phenomenal job that Casey's done. And then same with golf, with Mark Steinberg coming over, originally just with Tiger. And now we have about 27 golfers that we represent, including about 20% of the top 50 golfers in the world. So it's been a great ride over the course of the last 8 years or so. We saw some other opportunities to do the same in football. We're representing about a half dozen NFL quarterbacks, including the Mannings. Only on the marketing side, but we have considered looking at taking on the contract agent side as well. And then we dabble in some other individual sports as well, including a little bit of MMA right now. So all of that was the talent side of it. And obviously, as we became a lot more mature in the talent side, we just saw opportunities to grow and diversify the business beyond that. And Jeff and I were friends for years from my time at the NBA. And it was just the right time for me to make a jump over. It was the right opportunity for Excel, as well as there were so many other signs of new businesses coming on board and new opportunities. And so, since then, we've built out a corporate consulting business, brand marketing. We've built out a property representation business, hospitality business, a speakers business. So we have a lot of fun. We like to say we punch a bit above our weight. We're consistently rated as one of the top 3 sports marketing firms by Forbes, which is always funny because we're literally a 10th of the size of Wasserman's and CAAs of the world. But a lot of that's just by the value of the athletes that we represent and some of the brands that we work with. So it's been fun to do things a little bit differently. I think definitely our point of differentiation is being smaller, being nimble, and as part of that, being fully collaborative and connected as an organization. So you really don't see divisions. There's certainly sectors of what we do, but we don't really have any of those walls up that bigger agencies naturally have, because you can't operate that way when you're that big. So whether we're working on a consulting client or a property, everyone goes all in on brainstorms. Everyone is accessible and willing to chip in.
Great. I'll ask one more and then turn it over to Christian for some additional questions. But Excel was out in front with sponsorship patches for the NBA. wondering, crystal ball time, what might be on the forefront and how you look to innovate, at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, going back a little bit to my comments earlier, this is a time where everyone's just trying to figure out what's next. I mean, it's a really fun time where everything in our world as we knew it is being reinvented, and sports is no different. And so what we're doing now is just spending a lot of time on putting structure to innovation and what is that next thing. And so, we've divided the entire company up into working teams now to really look at what's going to be next level given all the environmental changes that we're seeing right now. And so we'll go through 20, 30 different ideas, opportunities. We'll only take on things that we think are right, that we think are synergistic with the rest of our business, and not get just too distracted. But we're spending a lot of time on it, and we don't necessarily have all the answers. I will say, on the jersey patch side, certainly just opportunistic as it related to the work I did at the league in helping to develop the program, and then coming over to Excel at the right time where a lot of teams needed a lot of help selling significantly valuable assets they weren't used to selling. So we've been through 4 of them now. We're taking on a few more, certainly related to this environment right now. That idea of brand integration within game and play is only going to continue and be expanded. And so, no secret that other leagues are looking at it now. We expect to take advantage of some of those opportunities, certainly in the marketplace. But outside of that, a lot of the trends that I mentioned earlier, we're spending a lot of time looking at. Especially, I'd say just on the attendance issues now, we're living all sides of it as an agency, right? And so no secret that the big emerging issue in baseball right now is the next set of negotiations with the players, given that roughly 40% of MLB revenues are tied to tickets. And if that is gone, that clearly has an impact on revenue and ultimately on what owners are willing to pay to players. So we're navigating that side of it. Then on the brand side of it, of course, we're helping our brand clients renegotiate, restructure their deals to account for that, but also trying to help them really figure out what new ways they can be activating and storytelling if they don't have that live audience in venue. And then, of course, with our property clients, the same thing, where properties are going to be increasingly reliant on activating with their partners in new ways and engaging fans in new ways. So there's a host of opportunities that are going to emanate from that, just that one issue alone.
Okay, we're going to the bullpen. What's going on, Emilio? Our first question comes from Isaac Andrews. He is a member of the MSA class of 2020. He'd like to know, from a strategic perspective, do you plan on being more proactive or reactive as market restrictions begin to loosen up?
Sorry, what was the last part of that question? As what?
As market restrictions begin to loosen up.
100% proactive in a number of areas. Figuring out what new segments of the business we want to go into. Being opportunistic that, fortunately, there's a lot of great, talented people out of work right now in our industry. And so where can we pick up some great talent as well? And we got to just be really ahead of that. And so I think, I talk to a lot of people in the industry every week about just their experiences, what they're dealing with. I think the start of this was so much triage. And even though, our business has essentially dried up in so many ways across our industry, everyone just seems like they're busier than ever. And I think part of that is just constantly paying attention to what's next, where is this going to go, and trying to stay ahead of it. We're certainly no different.
Awesome. Our next one comes from Brett Bauer. He says, people are working on their professional development and personal development in so many areas right now during this quote unquote pause. What are you working on, and where does a guy that's accomplished so much and is so well respected universally want to improve?
It's a great question. I wish I was working on more professional development. I think, as Brent talked to earlier, in management roles, so much of it is putting out fires, dealing with issues, and keeping your staff together. And there's certainly been no shortage of that right now. Everyone's dealing with a lot, and we're trying to keep everyone sane and focused and continuing to work toward their goals and our company goals. So I've probably spent a lot more time in management capacities than I have on the professional development side. But with that being said, I've picked out a couple of books I want to start reading and making sure I get through the summer.
Another question we have pertains to kind of the representation that you guys have at Excel, and kind of maybe what are the next areas that you may be looking into, from things like coaches into esports or shoutcasters, and how are you guys kind of going about looking for those?
Yeah, great question. We're doing a lot in esports now, actually, and if you think about esports as an industry, it aligns very well with the three main verticals that we're in. Gamer representation, aligns with our talent group. Certainly the property side, a number of properties are looking for assistance. And then, brands are, of course, all trying to figure it out as well. We've mostly taken a position on the property side right now. We represent now three major properties. One is NRG Gaming, and the two others we'll be announcing in the next 2 weeks, but two of the top sports properties and leagues in the industry. So that's been a good entree into a lot of other discussions. Should we look at representing gamers, which we've taken a close look at in the past. We're also providing a lot of brand marketing services as well, helping brands navigate the space as we've built up expertise there. So esports is definitely a big one. On the core talent representation side, we've just kind of dabbled in MMA. I think we're going to look to do a little bit more there. Makes sense. There's obvious areas that we're not in right now, in terms of the contract side of football, in terms of potentially soccer, where we're doing a ton on the brand side and properties, but nothing yet in athlete representation.
Awesome. And our last question we have is if you can kind of talk about the transition going from a league, NBA, to an agency, and how you feel like your time with the NBA helped you in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I went, so I started my career at SFX Sports Group, and that agency grew over 5 years. I took on a few different roles and then went to the NBA in 2001. And I remember feeling when I went to the NBA that it was my first real job. You work with a lot of really great, smart people that are incredibly driven, that work their butts off. There's a constant focus on innovation, doing things differently. And thankfully, my time there coincided with some incredible global growth around the world, and I was fortunate to be a part of that. You learn a lot at the league about process, about doing things the right way, about being incredibly prepared. I was fortunate to spend most of my time at the league with a good amount of exposure to David Stern, who was just the most brilliant person I've ever been around, literally, and learned a ton from him. I learned a ton about preparation, learned a ton about negotiations, positioning, relationships. He was just an absolute mastermind. So of course, after 15 years, you just take all those learnings and apply it in a different way. It's been fun to go to an agency that still allows me to stay connected to the core of my experience in basketball. We're representing players. We're representing now a number of NBA teams. We're representing a number of brands that have NBA partnerships. So I still have that connectivity there, and I'm able to provide a lot of insights and value on that side of the business. But then golf, baseball, football, all the other segments of the business that we're in as well. I think in terms of core things that we able to apply, I mean, I went from a 1,400 person property in the NBA to at the time a 60-person agency, now a 100-person agency in Excel. So a lot less process at our agency, but I've been working hard to implement a little more process as we grow, make sure that we are leveraging the full strength of the agency, collaborating as much as possible, that we are operating as the most effective unit as we can. So we've done a good amount of revamping our sales and marketing structure, and focused on the areas of growth that are truly going to be synergistic and additive to the rest of the organization.
Thank you, Emilio. I'll give it back to Matt.
Emilio, just so great to have you, and again, your graciousness and kind of working with us as we kind of put Virtual Symposium together. We owe you a big debt of gratitude.